It's 6:30 on Friday morning. Today I'm going to a prospective client meeting. I'm going to get up, get myself ready. I'm gonna tell you all about it. I'll see you in the car. Prospective client meetings, well, what does it mean? It means a meeting with somebody who might become a customer for your business, so somebody who might potentially pay for your services. So clearly it's an important thing. And the first thing I'd say is I used to be really nervous in the early days of the business. I used to get really nervous about prospective client meetings just because it was so important. And in the early days of the business, it was absolutely critical, really, that I managed to convert some of these prospective clients to paying clients. These days, it's a bit different. The business is reasonably steady, touch wood, and I'm less nervous, more excited. And as a small business owner, there's nothing better than somebody phoning you up and saying, I've read about your services online, or you've been recommended to me, phoning you up and actually inquiring about your business. It's a great feeling, and these days I'm just very excited about going to prospective client meetings. I want to know what people are trying to do, what they're trying to do with Excel, what their issues are, and I want to know how I can help. So that's the first point, really. If you can move from being nervous about a prospective client meeting to being excited about a prospective client meeting, then you're going in the right direction. But that only really comes, I think, with time and with experience. So on to my approach to these meetings. As always, I have a couple of simple ideas in mind. I think it's a stressful situation. For me, it is stressful. I think for a lot of people, it's a stressful situation. So just have some simple ideas in mind. And I just come with two simple ideas. Now, these aren't my own ideas. These are based on the work of a woman called Nancy Duarte, who has lots of good content out there about presentations and how to do presentations and other topics. And they're based on bits and pieces I've picked up over the years. So I'm not claiming these as my own ideas, but I have two ideas in mind. The first is be competent, and the second is be kind. Or you might switch those over. I'm not saying that's the order of importance. Be competent and be kind. So let's talk about those two ideas. So you've got to be competent. And this is clearly really important because somebody is talking about paying you to do something. So they need to know you can do the job. They need to know you've got the skills, the knowledge to do the job. So how do you go about proving competence? Well, there's a few things to think about. So I'm going to turn down the heating a bit here. There's a few things to think about. Firstly, before the meeting, how can you prove confidence? Well, I think it's good to have a strong online presence. Now, clearly, my view is biased, like everybody's view is. And my company now has a reasonably strong online presence on YouTube with the website and other bits and pieces. So that's the first thing. Can you prove your competence before the meeting by making some of your expertise available online for free? And I know my personal experience, to begin with, I was a bit reticent about putting things online for free. People were saying to me, well, if you put stuff online for free, you're never going to get paid to do it. So what are you doing? I'll be honest with you, the business got a lot easier once I started putting everything online for free. I don't hold anything back. Everything I know, I put online for free. For me, that's allowed me to develop a small online following, and either people before the meeting, they've checked out the videos anyway, or before the meeting I can say, oh, by the way, I have this YouTube channel. You can check out some of the videos there. So you're coming from a position of pre-arranged competence, you could say, because somebody has looked at your videos and thinks, yeah, this person clearly knows about what they're doing. So that's the first thing to think about. Can you put some stuff out there online to make you appear or to demonstrate your competence? Now, if you don't have things online, then another route that potential customers get to me is through recommendations. And I think this one requires less explanation, I suppose, but if you're doing a good job with your business, doing your projects well, most of the time you're going to naturally get recommendations. So this is another way you can build your business, and obviously you can feel more confident going to a client meeting knowing that the person you're speaking to has heard you're doing a good job. So this is kind of obvious, you've got to try to do a good job. If you do a good job, it will lead to recommendations. But if there's no recommendation, and if there's no YouTube or online kind of content, that's actually the situation I'm in today. The prospective customer I'm going to see today didn't know about the YouTube channel, isn't a recommendation, just came through a Google search, and that's another whole topic, trying to get your company visible on Google, but we won't go into that today. This gentleman came through a Google search, and I've had one conversation with him on the phone, and I'm going to go meet him now. So in this case, I've got to think carefully about competence. I've got to try to make it clear that I'm a competent individual through the course of the meeting. And because of this specific situation, I'm going to make sure that I try to explain some technical matters in a user-friendly manner to show that I'm in command of the subject matter, to show that the technical side is taken care of. So that's my first point. Try to be competent. The second point is try to be kind. And this is more difficult to explain, I think, but let's first talk about what my approach is not. And as I said at the beginning of the video, lots of different approaches to business. I'm not advocating mine as if it would work for everybody. But I'd say, for me, you've got to be kind. Lots of people out there in business saying, oh no, you've got to be tough, got to be confrontational, got to be a good negotiator. I'll be honest with you, I've never assumed that mindset. I've never applied tough negotiation skills in my business. The strategy that's worked for me is to be kind. And what does that mean in this sense? Well, a few things. And I think it's important to show that you're a human being. Alongside your competence, alongside your, going to stop here, just coming onto the main road. Alongside your competence, your technical ability, you've got to show that you're somebody who that prospective client can get on with. Are you kind of a decent person to be around? Are you somebody that they'd like to work with? Now, that's not technical competence. That's not a technical matter. That's to do with being a decent human being. When I go into these meetings, I try to establish some kind of human connection. I think it's particularly important for IT professionals like me who have a reputation, rightly or wrongly, as being geeks and not being people focused. You've got to try to develop quickly what you might call a rapport or a human connection. Now, I don't have a particular strategy for doing that. I'm not saying you should have a strategy or specific things to say, but first and foremost, treat the person you're dealing with like a person. So if you met them in a normal situation, not quite in a social situation, or maybe you could say in a social situation, if you met them in that kind of normal situation, then what would you be saying to them? You might be saying, asking them some questions about how the business is going, maybe more kind of general small talk, what's your journey like to work? You know the kind of things that are appropriate in your culture. But that's what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to show kindness by establishing a human connection, showing an interest in the other person regardless of business, and showing that I'm an okay person to be around. At the same time, particularly with spreadsheets, you've got to try to empathize with the customer, because if you've got an expert with you and you've been trying to do something that the expert is expert in, then you're going to naturally feel you might feel a little bit nervous about your efforts. You might feel a little bit embarrassed about your efforts. And I see this all the time with spreadsheets. And when I come in, usually there's some spreadsheets that people have been using, have been trying to get to work, and people are often a little bit embarrassed about them, and they've got no reason to be, of course, but it's natural when you're showing them to somebody who's purportedly an expert to be a little bit kind of reluctant, I suppose you might say, or a little bit embarrassed about your efforts. So again, be kind and just try to ease that anxiety. You can say things like, don't worry about it. Say things like, it's my job to deal with this kind of thing. And, you can be complimentary about what they've tried to do in Excel themselves too. Just got a lorry pulling out in front of me here. You can be, complimentary about their efforts. Certainly what you don't want to do is you don't want to make them feel, in my view anyway, although I think this is a legitimate business tactic for some people, but don't make them feel bad about their efforts. You don't want to disempower them. I can kind of understand the logic of that. People say, okay, if the customer feels completely disempowered, then they're going to depend on me to provide this knowledge. Yeah, that might work for a short term. In the long term, it's not going to work. In the long term, in my opinion, you've got to be kind, you've got to be likable. If you're telling the client that they're rubbish, that's not a long-term relationship there. So turning up and just being sensitive to the fact that they might be a bit embarrassed even about what they're doing, their efforts to date, that's something to bear in mind. What else have we got here? You've got to show an interest in the client's business, and you've got to avoid reaching for solutions. Okay, and this still links into the kindness theme. You've got to be interested in the client's business. You've got to take what I call an holistic view. So don't just focus on what is going on in the particular situation you're talking about. In my case, we're talking about a spreadsheet. It's just as important for you to try to understand what the whole business model is, show an interest in the whole business, try to get the customer talking about what the issues are in the business. Now, clearly, this gives you a lot of useful information about the business, but also tapping into the kindness theme, it's showing that you're interested, showing that you can empathize with them as well. So again, it's setting you up as somebody who is technically competent, but also somebody who they don't mind being around, somebody who's generally a good human being. In my view, this is the approach you should be taking to client meetings. It's got a complicated traffic situation here. I think we're okay. So that's the main point. That wasn't scripted or anything, but that's my approach. Try to be kind, try to be competent. Now, I've got a client meeting today, and another point is that taps into competence is you've got to be organized, control the controllables. Even before, with this customer I'm seeing today, we haven't agreed any paid work yet. With my company, the consultation is free. I'll give quite a lot of advice for free before we even get into the paid work. But it doesn't matter that we're not being paid yet. I'm providing the best service possible. So that means me being organized. I'm on the road early, and you want to do some filming as well. So I got all that organized, just got to turn the heating down a bit more here. And another thing is, with being organized, obviously I've got the client's phone number, so I sent him a text this morning saying, just to confirm my meeting, I'll be there at 11 o'clock, and I'm on schedule to be there about 10:30. So again, the kind of things that they say, control the controllables, you can control these things, and these are all going to help make a good impression. Anyway, so be kind, be competent, and I'm on my way to my client meeting today. Going to the east coast of England, so it looks quite scenic out here, I've got to say, so I'm quite excited. It's a beautiful winter's day in the UK. Should be able to see the sun shining behind me. And I'm going to go into the meeting and apply, be kind, be competent, and I'm going to let you know how it goes. So I'll see you in a bit. Okay, we're back on the motorway now, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the client meeting I just had. So yeah, overall it was a successful meeting. We are going to do some paid work from now on, and that's the main outcome really. So in that respect, it was definitely successful. So I'll just tell you a bit about what happened, without too much analysis, though I might throw in some of my reflection and critique along the way. So as I was saying before, it's important to do a lot of listening, I think, in these client meetings. And I'd say about 80% of the time he was talking, about 20% of the time I was talking. The guy I was talking to is the business owner. It's small to medium-sized business. He started the business, so he knows the business inside out. And he's also quite an analytical guy, relatively speaking. He had several spreadsheet files. He showed me 2 or 3. And as I predicted, he was quite kind of embarrassed about the spreadsheet files. And, he really didn't need to be, for a couple of reasons. One, because it really doesn't matter. And I'm not going to, why would I try to humiliate anybody about the spreadsheet files? But I guess it's natural to feel like that anyway. And secondly, spreadsheet files weren't bad at all. And this guy, as I said, is actually quite analytically inclined, and that really helps. That's really going to help with the project. So I spent a lot of time listening to him talk about the business, trying to understand the business model. I think this is so important. And people might say, "Oh, business model. What does that mean?" I want to know, how does the business make money? That's really that's my guiding question when I'm trying to think about the business model. So I was asking questions about, how the company brings money in, the cost structure for the company. And this not only helped me find important details about the spreadsheet modeling, more importantly, I think it helped me understand the overall business model. Because any spreadsheet model that you do, any management consulting project that you do, fits into a broader context. It's going to fit into the organization somewhere. You could say it's going to fit into the industry somewhere. And I think people really underestimate how important it is to understand that broader context. Your projects can be so much more powerful if you can find the right part of the company to be working in, the right data to be working in. If you can align your projects with the strategic objectives of the company, they're going to have more impact, they're going to be more sustainable over the time. So yeah, he was showing me the spreadsheets. I was getting to grips with the business model, how the business makes money, and learning about like the long-term strategic objectives. Also talking about the issues. Those of you who've watched the rich picturing video, and I highly recommend rich picturing when you're trying to understand the company situation. I have a video on the channel about rich picturing. One of the outputs of rich picturing is a list of issues. So as I'm trying to understand the business model, look at these spreadsheets, I'm also trying to gently uncover the issues. And this taps into what I was speaking about before, the 2 things: try to be kind, try to be competent. It's also kind of a kind thing to do, tell me about what's on your mind, although you shouldn't make it sound like it's a counseling session or anything like that, but just naturally in the conversation, you can pick up what the main issues are in the business. And in the rich picturing video, I'll talk about 10 to 12 issues. And I've got my notes in my notebook, but in my head, I've got a list of, the top 3 things really that he's worried about in his business. And this takes me on to, because obviously I'm coming from a spreadsheet modeling perspective, and we wanted to actually scope out the project. So we looked at 2 or 3 spreadsheets, and quite quickly we found a particular project that we could get going. Now, it's always difficult to know how to pitch the projects, and I talk about leveraging projects in different ways, and I actually spoke to the client about this. You can have a small project that is fairly manageable, the data's available, it's likely to succeed, but it only has a small impact, so it might only help part of the situation. That is what I call low leveraging. High leveraging is where you have much more ambition, more data sources in the project. You might be trying to consolidate multiple files together, and potentially that file can have a much bigger impact. So when you're first engaging with a customer, you've got to think about how to leverage the projects. High leverage projects, I don't think that's the best thing to do first, because the customer might be waiting a long time to get value out of what you're doing. That's never a good thing, and you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself as well as a consultant to deliver something really big. So we agreed to do a smaller project first, and I've got a very clear idea in my mind how this project is going to work, how the spreadsheet file is going to work. I was able to kind of test my ideas with the client. We're going to do this small low leverage project first, might be 2 or 3 days work, and then we're going to move on to higher leverage stuff and probably integrate more functions into this first file that we work on. And for me, that's the key to making these IT projects successful. The traditional approach is to talk about it all at the beginning, develop a specification, and then to build something to that specification. To me, that's too static, and business requirements change all the time. As the customer sees what you can do, their requirements are going to change as well. So having a kind of static brief, although that happens on some of my projects, I try to avoid that, generally speaking. Try not to work to a very detailed brief, have 2 or 3 things in mind as objectives for a particular project, and then have a more flexible approach, building in things as you go along. That works particularly well in Excel because we've got such a good environment, a good platform for building new things in as we go along. I always say requirements are emergent. They emerge as you go through the project, and your approach as a consultant has got to be flexible enough to work with those emergent requirements. So for me, having a static brief to begin with, that could be a starting point, but you shouldn't be committing to that brief. I think from the client side or from the consultant side, that's not a good thing. So we have a fairly flexible brief for a small piece of work, and this should allow us to build trust, should allow me to prove my competence on this project. So we're going to start with a small project. Hopefully I'll be able to do it in the next couple of weeks. And for me, the sooner the client can get something that's helping them, and it might not be something particularly sophisticated, it might not be the finished product, but the sooner the client can get something that's helping them, the better. And on my projects, within the first day, or certainly the first 2 days, I want to send something to the customer, say to them, this is not finished, but this is the direction it's going in. Often they can start getting value straight away. That takes pressure off you as a consultant, and yeah, it's in the spirit of what we're talking about, this kind of iterative approach, small steps, flexible, and dealing with emerging requirements. So that's how it went. It took about an hour and a half. The meeting, I think we had a pretty good rapport. We were able to have a chat about a few other things as well. I got to meet this guy's cat too, gorgeous little cat he's got. So yeah, overall I'm pretty happy, but as with any of these projects, there's a lot of work to do up front. I've already spent half a day on this project, and haven't done any billable work, haven't done any work that I can charge for yet. So you've got to keep an eye on that. On the other hand, it's just great fun. It really is the best part of the job for me, apart from doing YouTube. It's the best part of the job for me to be able to go and meet someone, and for them to phone you up in the first place and think these people might be able to help you. So then to be able to go and be able to kind of connect, understand their situation, they understand where you're coming from as well, and to be able to agree to do some work, it really is exciting. It gets the adrenaline pumping, and after the meeting I was reasonably happy today, so pretty happy now driving back to Nottingham. Anyway, the work starts here with the project, so I'll be starting on that next week, and it's Friday now, so we'll get started with that next week. Anyway, I think that's everything interesting about the meeting. So yeah, just to go over my approach for new prospective client meetings. If you're interested in it, then I talk about you've got to be kind, you've got to be competent, you've got to be a decent person, someone who they don't mind being around, and you've got to have the skills to get the job done. I recommend focusing on those 2 things. Should allow you to at least get through and hopefully excel in those prospective client meetings. Okay, I'm Chris from Target Spreadsheet Solutions. Thanks for watching to the end. I'd love to see you in another video on the channel. Got lots of spreadsheet tutorials, VBA tutorials on the channel. I'd love to see you in one of those other videos. So see you soon. Take care.